So today is a pretty heavy day, but an important one. We are on a minibus to Auschwitz, the concentration camp. We watched Schindler's List last night to prepare. We did the Jewish history tour to prepare.
Right, we barely slept because of all that.
Yeah, so it's not easy to sleep after watching Schindler's List, knowing you gotta get up in the morning to go to Auschwitz. So that's where we're headed today. We got on a minibus that we thought was gonna be a nice coach bus, so I wouldn't recommend it. I would actually recommend trying to get on one of the coach buses, but anyway, it's not too bad because it's not very full. And so you can see a little bit of the countryside as we're going past. It takes about an hour and a half, a little bit more on one of these small buses to get to Auschwitz. And then our journey begins. We have a 3-hour tour in English booked, which we're both really looking forward to.
Right. And this bus was also 26 zloty, just about $6 for the two of us.
One way.
One way will be $6, and then the way back will be another $6. It is kind of uncomfortable, to be honest. In here, the seats are pretty hard.
But when you consider the perspective of where we're going and how people got here, it makes it seem very comfortable.
Right, it's all about perspective, right? And after watching all that stuff and some of the documentaries about the Holocaust and what happened here in the concentration camps and everything, it totally gives you a completely different sense of appreciation. So even this is not too bad right now.
So I think we'll have a little bit of time when we get there before our tour starts to give more of an introduction in terms of what we've learned in the past few days and how we feel about it all, so we will see you there. Okay, so here I am in the town of Auschwitz. I think that's how you say it in Polish. I'm gonna give you a little bit of logistical help here. So you can take a tour from Krakow that includes the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum, and that's all included, but it's about double the price that we paid, because what we did is we pieced it together ourselves. So if you wanna do that and save some money and have a little bit more flexibility, you can. You can just, instead of getting a tour, which includes everything and picks you up, I think even at your door or somewhere centrally in Krakow, we actually went to the bus station and took a minibus. I think you can also take a coach bus here. But it does not take you directly to the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum. It takes you to a bus stop called Auschwitz Museum, which is different than the bus stop in the city of Auschwitz, which is the Polish version of Auschwitz. Anyway, the point being, it drops you off at a bus stop and you have to have some sort of phone and map working to be able to find your way to the museum, because it's about a 10-minute walk and there's nobody here to tell you which direction to go in. So make sure you research that a little bit ahead of time if you're gonna save maybe 30 bucks a person and piece it together yourself. We have finally arrived from the little bus stop where the minibus dropped us off, and now we're pretty much at the entrance. This is the sign that welcomes us to the city of Auschwitz, but we're actually also at the concentration camp. You can see lots of different tour buses. One of the things that I saw recommended on a website that we didn't do, apparently the best bus, if you're gonna put it together yourself, apparently the best bus to take from Krakow is this one right here. And you can't really see the brand on it, but it's Lajkonik, L-A-J-K-O-N-I-K. This one takes you from Krakow right here. For some reason, we just went to the bus station and the lady didn't speak very good English, so we ended up getting a minibus ticket, which took us a little bit further away. It was a little complicated, but it's a great day, so we were able to make it work. But I recommend getting a ticket on this one right here. It's the Lajkonik. Takes you right here to Krakow. So we are now at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and museum. We have a guided tour booked. We're about to go through the security line and go in, and I don't know how many pictures and videos we can take inside, so I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction from the outside. So we watched Schindler's List, we finished it yesterday. It's a hard trip, it's a hard moment, but it's really important, especially considering what's going on in Poland right now. There is what is considered by many a far-right government, and we're actually in a region of Poland that's considered an LGBT-free zone. So it's basically a zone in which there's some level of discrimination against the minority. Very scary considering the context of the history of World War II and the history of Poland. and something kind of important to keep in mind, and I think something important to publicize, because it can be a slippery slope. I don't think it's that serious. I think Poland's a wonderful country. Just like the United States, just like Brazil, just like Hungary, you have a large group of people that voted against the current government and a large group of people that voted for the current government. And there's probably not a ton of people in Poland that are strictly anti-LGBT, but it is something that was able to pass in the government in this kind of weird anti-LGBT propaganda law. Something to publicize and to keep in the consciousness, because we need to be able to apply political and social pressure against governments like that and policies like that, so that we don't ever have things happen again, like a tiny group being discriminated against and taken to the extreme. So that's where we are today, at the extreme end of it. We're gonna go in, we're gonna see a bunch of stuff, shoes, hairs, trains, platforms. I don't know what I'm gonna be allowed to film, but I will definitely give you a debriefing when I come out. I've been to Auschwitz once before in my life. It was difficult then, it's more difficult now, even that I'm a little bit older. But I think that this kind of experience brings depth not only to travel, but to life, and I think it's really important. So hopefully I'll be able to get a little bit of footage to bring you along with me and inspire you to come here today, or to inspire you to come here sometime on your own when you can. It's only about an hour and a half outside of Krakow. Okay, I'm gonna talk with a lower voice because we're actually inside the concentration camp area, and I want to be respectful of the solemnity of the place. So here we are, we're inside, we're just waiting for our English language guide. Behind me you can see the sign, which is in German, which says "Work makes you free," and that was kind of the sarcastic sign that you would see at the entrance. So here we are.
First of all, I'd like to tell you just how it started here. Well, I suppose you all know that the Second World War started in 1939 when German army invaded Poland.
Here I am at the iconic entrance to the Auschwitz concentration camp and museum. What you'll see here is the sign in German. It says "Arbeit macht frei," which means work makes you free. Kind of a sick joke that they put to kind of either mess with people or deceive them into thinking that it was going to be a nice way to be free just by working hard. This concentration camp is split into two parts, like we said before. There's Auschwitz, and there's Auschwitz II, which is called Birkenau. This is more of a museum, and Auschwitz II is more of an open-air museum. They're both amazing.
Effort. The same trains could take weapons to wherever Germans were fighting, and they could use them to win the war.
Here you can see when these people were deported, when they got here, and when they died. So a lot of these people were executed within a few days, within a few weeks. These are the women, and usually they will be killed much sooner than the men, since they were kept alive to work and do the heavy labor.
Okay, so that was very intense. That was the first half of the tour. We just went through Auschwitz, which is kind of the bunker prison camp. Now there was actually a gas chamber there, but most of the gas chambers are at Birkenau, which is the second part. So we're gonna take a bus over there and meet our tour guide over there and continue the tour. Quick little tip, really plan your bathroom breaks because there's almost no bathrooms here. All we have outside here is this little porta potty, and there's about a 15-minute line at least for it. So you really gotta plan around that. I think this is one of the main bathrooms is broken, but it looks like even under the best situation, the bathroom situation is not amazing. So pee before you get here if you can. We are at Birkenau, which is Auschwitz II. It's the part of Auschwitz which was the death camp, basically, where people were exterminated. And we're going to walk now the same path that Jews would have walked on who were chosen to die. Right where I started, you were given the thumbs up this way or this way. If you went one way, you got registered and you were put to work. If you went the way we're going, you walked to the gas chamber. This was the actual path. This is what's left. This is the ruins of one of the crematoriums at Auschwitz. Okay, so it took me a while to think about how do you make an ending to a video about Auschwitz, let alone how do you even make a video about Auschwitz. I decided to finish with the only comments that I could think of that would kind of help encapsulate it, and I'm standing in front of another Holocaust memorial. You can see some of the pictures of actual relatives that lived here, where I am now. And their grandparents and great-grandparents that were victimized in that way. One of the approaches I took to making a video was how to get to Auschwitz, what are the logistics of it, so that more people can experience it. So hopefully that doesn't take away from the experience, the fact that I focused on those kind of logistics, because as far as from the emotional standpoint, I don't know how to create that experience for someone else. I think it's almost something that you have to do for yourself, so that's why I wanted to try to help people do that. But there are some things that I can say about how it affected me. I don't think you can just go to a place like Auschwitz and just kind of look at it and say, here's my guide, oh, I saw some hair, I saw some luggage, and really feel the impact. We watched several documentaries, we watched Schindler's List. I think you should do some reading and some watching, maybe some first-hand accounts, which there are many available on YouTube, so that you can start to get the emotional weight. You kind of wake up for like a week or two after, or go to bed in those moments where you're kind of quiet and have time to yourself, and you start getting hit by shock and horror of what actually happened. And then, strangely for me, I would have these moments where I would be upset about the water pressure, or something small in my life would be bothering me, and for like 2 or 3 weeks when that would happen, these images of Auschwitz would come into my head, and I would just say to myself, as cheesy as it sounds, I was like, well, gosh, at least my family's not being hauled off and deported. I mean, I know that sounds so reductive, but those are actual thoughts that went through my head for quite a while after that kind of experience. So there is a level of almost cheesy life appreciation that comes when you're presented with such a stark contrast as that. But that's something that I think kind of fades as the immediate emotional impact fades. But the biggest thing that really sat with me after quite a bit of contemplation was this idea of what am I looking at? What was I looking at when I'm at Auschwitz? I think a lot of times we want to jump to this kind of way of thinking of we're looking at some horrible external evil that happened in a different time to people that were so different from us and by people that were so different from us. But when you really let it sit for a while, you kind of remember and understand that we are looking at ourselves because we're looking at humans and we're looking at the potential that we as individuals and we as societies have to do harm to one another. I don't think that we're born good or bad. I think that we're born both. The line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every man, said someone much wiser than me. And so what we're looking at is a potential within ourselves. And then that begs the question, what makes us good and what makes us evil and what makes us do such terrible things? I mean, if you look at any country or any society in the history of the civilization that we know, certainly post-agriculture, we see acts that you could call arguably genocide and destruction and rape and torture and killing, the United States conquering of the Indians, and the same thing in Mexico by the Spanish, and the enslavement of Africans, the horrors in Cambodia, the rape of Nanking. I mean, you're not going to find any culture or any society, certainly not post-agricultural, that hasn't done things that we look at and consider heinous, probably even 10 years later. So it makes you think, what are we looking at and what are we talking about? And if there's anything that we can take away from it, how do we prevent it, right? That's the basic question. So I can't answer that question because there are greater minds than me that have tried and are still trying, but I can say part of the process that's happened within me in terms of thinking about that, and this is what it is. So there's a Native American saying that talks about us having two wolves, something like that. I'm not going to get it perfect, but it talks about us having two wolves that are battling inside of our heads, this idea of good and bad being embodied within each person. And the young person asks to the sage, which one is going to win? Is the good wolf going to win, or is the bad, evil wolf going to win? And the answer is whichever one you feed. So the question that we can ask ourselves if we want to do any honor to experiences like what I had at Auschwitz, and that I hope that you have there someday if you're able to go, or if not, if you're able to witness through all the great documentaries and films and books that are out there, the question that I hope that we are able to ask ourselves is, what wolf are we feeding with our thoughts, with our actions, with our habits, which become our national policies and our ways of life and our ways of advertising? Is the thought that I'm having right now when I'm dealing with this person in a restaurant, or when I'm dealing with my employee or my boss or my housekeeper, is the thought and the action and the habit that comes from that one of separateness and otherness? I'm above you, I'm superior? Because that's what it really is. That's what it really is when we're talking about what happened in the Holocaust. We're talking about an othering, the human ability to make a group of people or another individual somebody that is so other that they're no longer even human. It's this othering that comes from this sense of superiority. And this happens every time we put nationalism above universal humanity. Anytime we're the greatest country in the world, And whenever that comes with this hint of other people are less, we're doing the same thing, just to a smaller extent. Anytime we think that our race is better or our culture is more superior, yeah, I mean, you can say that maybe this work of literature is more superior to this work of literature, or you could say that this opera or this way of surfing in Hawaii is better than how they surf in North Carolina. But we have to be very careful that there isn't a hint of the superiority of the basic worth of the human. We have to ask ourselves, is that what's happening when we're making this thought and when we're making this policy? Which wolf are we feeding? Are we feeding the good wolf or the bad wolf? Are we feeding the wolf that says that we're all equal, which was basically embodied in the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which we still haven't really fulfilled, but the seed is there? The seed is also there inside Christianity and all the great religions, this idea that everyone is equal, that everyone has equal access to whatever that particular religion believes is the highest form of good. So we can ask ourselves, in honor of the people that died, the people that were tortured, the people that were othered, is what I'm thinking right now, is what I'm doing today, and is how I'm acting in my voting, in my purchases, in my interactions with friends and family, in my interactions with everyone that I meet every day? Is it a manifestation of a feeling of universality for other humans? Or is there a part of me that's feeding that wolf that says that I'm better than you, that I'm more superior to you because of my race or my country or my culture? That's something that we can do. So hopefully I was able to sum that up with a little bit of coherence, because the whole experience is not going to hit you in a coherent way when you go to Auschwitz. But in honor of all the people that, I'm not going to say sacrificed their lives, because that's not what they did. It wasn't a willing sacrifice, that were destroyed because of the ignorance and the feeding of the evil wolf inside of people for too long in Germany and Europe at the time. In honor of that, we make this video and hope that it inspired you to go to Auschwitz someday so that you can look more closely at that line that runs down the heart of every man and woman that divides good and evil. Thank you, and see you next time on Nomadic and Travels. I appreciate you watching.